I'm Mark Boris, and this is Straight Talk.
Michael Hooper, welcome to Straight Talk.
Thank you for having me. How good?
How you feeling?
Well, a little bit tired. I was on, got in late last night from Dubai. There was a sevens tournament up there, so I was up there doing a bit of stuff with HSBC, which
As in commentary, or
a bit of commentary, bit of rugby stuff. So a sevens competition. The sevens kicked off their competition for the year. So big event up in Dubai, which was cracking start.
It's mad up there, isn't it? Like the stuff that's going on in the Middle East, like Saudi, Dubai, Abu Dhabi. Did you have a look around?
Mate, I didn't. I wanted to get to the wave pool that Kelly's just opened up in Abu Dhabi, but no, we were in Dubai. But the event was cricket, rugby, sevens, there's a heap of stuff going on. Some a big concert right at the end of it. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I do surf.
Yeah. So I actually sat with I had breakfast with a mate of mine called David Gingill, and he went to the wave pool last week.
Which one?
In Abu Dhabi.
He did that
the
one?
new one. There's no hotel built there, but it's just the facility. He said it is unbelievable, and he showed me some videos of him on some waves, and he went up with a mob of blokes and a team of blokes, and they booked the whole joint out. And he said the place is on steroids. He said that whole between Abu Dhabi is like an hour and a half between that and Dubai. He said just driving through, you're not driving through desert anymore. You're driving through Disneyland on steroids. It's mental. Every facility you can possibly imagine for anyone in the world, sporting, fun, recreation, hotels, swimming pools in the middle of the desert, like everything is mental.
They were in a mall that had an aquarium in it, like genuine sharks in the aquarium, and then you're just walking past and buying something.
There's nothing.
Yeah, mate, it's remarkable. Great place.
Yeah. So what are they doing in terms of rugby sevens? So what's going on there? What was Dubai? Was this just the start of the rugby sevens season?
Start of their tournament. So, I mean, their last big thing was the Olympics. So it was quite an interesting one because, as always, new seasons, new sort of after that end of the 4-year period, there's a new cycle. So, yeah, sevens kicks off. They go, through, they're down to Cape Town this week, but then they'll come to Perth, Hong Kong, and I think end up Singapore and LA. So that's their tournament.
That's pretty cool. So you tried to get to rugby sevens in the Olympics.
Tried.
Yeah. What
Being
happened?
the key word.
What happened?
Mate, it's a hard game. So it came into the Olympics 2016.
Yep.
Probably arguably before that, it was a little bit specialist, but not as specialist as it is now. It's bloody hard. Different energy source, different skill set. They are real generalists in what they have to do. They've got to pass. They've got to be super fit. They're all agile and all 22,
in other words, fast.
22 and fast.
Yeah.
And 22 years old. And I'm 30. I tried to do it at 32 and had never played before. Played 2 tournaments, and I had a good first game, and it went downhill from there pretty quick. So,
what was it? Is it gas?
What's that?
Is it the amount of gas you have? Do you have to play sevens, or is it the speed of the game? What is it?
Oh, well, I was a fit 15s player. I had a good engine in 15s footy, but in sevens, it's the repeat speed and being fast, but then being able to repeat it, and then the skill set. The ball moves differently to it's still tackle, it's still pass, still scrum and line out. The things that we know about footy, but it's just the ball moves different and it's hard. It's it's fast. I was underdone.
There's so much more space.
Yeah,
because there's less people, obviously, but there's so much space, and it looks like you get to run a lot further than you would in a 15s game.
Yeah, a lot further than you would, and I'd been playing a certain way for 15 years, and then I had to try and undo that sort of subconscious way of how I entered the field, and I struggled. So I got better I think if I had a little bit longer. We would have got a bit closer, but no, not to be. It would have been cool. The guys end up coming 4th in the Olympics, so would have been nice, but no dice.
One of the Roosters' recent recruits, which is a team I'm on the board of, is Mark. He played in the rugby sevens in the Olympics in Paris. Mark Nawaqangi, and I cannot spell the rest of his name, and I cannot pronounce it.
Nawaqangi Tawasi.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
And how do you think? Because between the two codes, there's been a lot of switching. We've had Joseph Suali recently. He's gone that way to rugby, and now we've got someone like Mark going to rugby league. How do you think that sort of transition occurs? I always thought someone like Rocky Elson would have been a great rugby league player. I just thought something about him. I think you would have been too tough. You got to be. I'm not saying rugby union is not tough, but there's got to be a lot of there's a lot of physical consequences in rugby league when you've got the ball on your own and you've got to hit it up. and you're always sort of pretty robust, physically robust bloke. What do you think about that changeover between either rugby league and rugby union or rugby union and rugby league? Let's talk rugby union and rugby league first.
Going rugby union to rugby league? Well, I think
What do you think it takes?
Oh, well, I think Marky's the picture boy for it. I mean, his first game was unbelievable. I played heaps with Mark. And I think the gift that Marky has, well, he played a little bit of league growing up, or a lot of league growing up. But his athletic ability, he's able to get leap. He's one of those guys kind of like Israel, right, that just sort of levitates up. Everyone else jumps, but they just glide up and have hang time. And I loved how hungry he was for some of his carries off the line. He goes, plays, what is it, Holden Cup? The games below. Yep. So he's managed by the same manager that I am. So I was seeing some of his cup performances and then, his debut there for the Roosters. And it's going to, he was carrying those hard ones off the try line. Look, I don't think there's anywhere to hide on the rugby league field. Like you watch a game of Origin, and I don't think there's a tougher game.
Origin,
played like, and I've played a lot of rugby, and rugby is a tough game, but it's tough in a different way. I think rugby league's probably tougher, in like
in a physical sense.
There's no hiding. Well, you got to carry off your try line. Like you've got 5 guys after you. And you can't hide, the play is going to come your side. I don't know. I would love to have a crack at it. But yeah, it looks, it's a brutal sport.
How about the other way? So Joseph Suaalii has now gone from rugby league to playing for Australia. How do you think he's been going? Let's look at that first. He's only had 2 games.
Again, similar to Marky, right? Like he played a fair bit of union at school. Was at one of the big rugby schools in Sydney, yeah. And obviously that whole week around that England week, I was very surprised that he was selected. Big call to make, and he did so well. Like, man, that kid again has that ability to levitate, has that time in the air. Looks like an incredible athlete. Looks like his preparation. I mean, I heard him on this show, and just the detail he has for a young man.
Yeah, 21.
And 21 in his preparation is leaps and bounds ahead of many 21-year-olds that I've ever seen, myself included. The way he's going about his business at that time. So, I mean, he is going to be, immense.
You mentioned Israel Folau, and I just want to touch on that for a second, if you don't mind. I don't want to get into politics, but let's call it politics of censorship. You would remember what happened.
I've forgotten, actually, completely.
Well, I'm going to remind you. But Israel sort of like got outed, playing at the highest level of rugby union. And I don't even know what he's doing now, but one of the most promising, like, rugby or rugby league, doesn't really matter. Rugby, competitors that the both codes have ever shown. How easy is it to fall out with the administration of a game, and how relevant is the administration? Like, and if you're a player, do you have to conform, or what's the deal?
It's an interesting. I mean, that is such a broad topic, right? Because who are the most supported entities in the world? It's actually the athlete, not the teams a lot of the time. So the biggest followed and supported people around the world are your Ronaldos or your LeBron Jameses, or, people within the teams, the stories within not the teams themselves. I mean, you got maybe a Man U or, a Yankees or something like that, household names, they're up there, but they still don't have the same type of followers that some of these individuals have. So getting that balance right of how do you allow someone to be themselves and represent the community that they represent and fit within a team is a trick. That's what the team's all about. How do you get that balance right? With we see it in all different situations. And I think rugby's a really tough one, isn't it? And sport in general. Because when you're a paid athlete, and I'm not making any excuses for people, and myself included, I've made mistakes and publicly made mistakes as well. So I'm part of this as well. But you're a well-paid young man in a team environment, trying to find your way at 20, 21 years old, with pressure, ego, expectation, all these things. Immaturity. And we expect people to be finished products, and we're kind of surprised that we're not. So, I think it's inevitable that mistakes are going to be made and going to happen, whether, people deem them as mistakes or not. But how do we then allow, you don't want to cancel someone because of one thing that's done. How do you then bring, second chances are super important in life because, there's guys and girls making mistakes every weekend. That's how you learn and you grow, is you make a mistake and you go again. You just want the mistakes not to be super grand. And I'm not talking about the Israel Folau thing here. I'm more going on a broader spectrum when it comes to, being out in public or, comments made on social media, all those type of things.
Do you think there's a level of, or should there be a level of responsibility to a sports person who is getting paid good money, that cuts across their own belief system? Do you think, is that a fair thing, do you think?
Explain that more to me.
Like Israel's view on homosexuality relative to his religious beliefs, which he seems to be fairly strident about. There was an expectation that he didn't take that into the public arena because he's a representative player on good money. It potentially brings a game into disrepute because the administration of the game believes that has a different belief system and more a majority belief system. That is, there's nothing wrong with homosexuality, it's accepted, blah, blah, blah. And therefore, if you go and say something that's against our group belief, that's going to be a problem for you, ultimately you, Israel, which is sort of what happened. And I'm not asking you to give me an ethical view on between his beliefs and what the Rugby Union beliefs are. I'm not that's not territory I want to go to. But as a sports person, a young sports person who firmly believes in anything, is it important, how important is it for the administration to tell him how to speak publicly?
Well, it is important. But how that's managed, because again, we're talking about athletes who represent a community, and that's a good thing, as long as it's a healthy, positive discussion. And so how that's communicated, you want different. That's the great thing about a team. You've got different personalities and represent different things, and but the communication and how that's then portrayed is probably the discussion that, I'm not sure who's nailing it at the moment. I haven't digged deep enough into it of the, sports around the world that really nail this type of a thing. So, I'd like to know how it's done best because, it's tricky. It's tricky water. It really is.
Yeah, cool. In some respects, it can stuff someone's career up. A lot of people just say, listen, okay, I get it. I'll hold my views to myself. I got my views and my community views. I'll just I'll prosecute my community view within my own community, and I'll just be quiet relative to everything else. But other people sort of see themselves as so strident that they nearly feel as though they've got an obligation relative to their community, their personal community, their private community, that actually is over and above the rugby union community. So you all of a sudden you get conflicted. You had a run in with Eddie Jones. Mm-hmm. Didn't, he's your coach. And, if you don't like him, he doesn't like you. It sort of limits your career to some extent, and it did to some extent. At what point do you say, okay, stuff it, I'll just fall in line. I'll do what I've got to do. I'll do it. I my career is more important. I'm just going to fall in line and do what I'm told.
Well, what you got to ask yourself, what's your hierarchy of, what do you want to achieve? If you want to achieve, I guess, disagreement with a coach, or do I want to fall in line because I want to make the team, or do I want to, and I'm not saying that was my situation, or you got to choose where you value your things, and then whatever's at the top, you got to go after that. I think that's the simple way of doing it.
That's interesting. So, and I think I sort of agree with it. I've never been in that position, but I think I agree with that. That seems to be the most practical outcome. In other words, if you choose a path, then that's your path. Don't worry about the consequences, because you can't complain about the consequences if you choose that path. When you make the priority, you say, that's my priority. God, in his case, is my priority, and the written scriptures is my priority. My community, my private community is my priority. Then you can't really complain about the consequences at the end of the day.
Well, you got to accept whatever they're going to be, right? Because you can't choose what the outcome's going to be. That's what we like as athletes. I mean, you want to try and control as much as you possibly can control, but you're never going to know what the fallout is in a game sense on the field. You never know what the fallout's going to be, off the field. You never know what people are going to take this conversation for, even as an example, and how that's going to go. So, I think you've got to be comfortable in the position or the stance that you take, but then after the fact, that's what review's about. Like you see that week to week in sport. You see that, and like I talked about, if someone makes a mistake or if you get good feedback, okay, well, do I want to do that again? Do I not want to do that again? What would I change? How do I want to go? Do I want to change my values or my hierarchy after that? So that reflection and review is important, but you've got to make a choice at the end of the day, don't you? And that comes down to action.
Let's have a look at who Michael Hooper was growing up. Manly kid?
Yep. Local
school. Where'd you go to school?
So I went to school in Chatswood. I went to high school in Chatswood.
Just
Mum wanted to get me off the beaches, I think. So
local state school or a rugby school?
Yeah, St. Pius.
St. Pius.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, not a big rugby school, but a rugby school.
And Mum wanted to get you away from the Northern Beaches, did she?
It's a bit of a bubble, mate. You know what it's like. You know what they say about the Insular Peninsula.
And although they also say now about the Southern Shire, and they also now say, and they've definitely been saying about these suburbs for a long time. So, but for sure, Mum wanted to get you away from the beach scene.
Yeah, well, I think so. Yeah. I mean, when we talk about it now, there was an element of, being, Chatswood's right on the train line there. You'd get exposure to different things. It was a good school, day school, not a boarding, had to travel a bit to get there, from Collaroy Plateau. So we weren't in Manly, we were in Collaroy
so you're on the plateau, like you're right in the heart of the Northern Beaches.
In the thick of it, mate. Yeah, so...
Surfer? You were surfing then?
Yeah, surfing then.
Were you also in the surf club?
Did Manly Surf Club.
Manly Surf Club, okay. So you're on the beach weekends.
Mm-hmm.
Then whenever you get an opportunity, go and have a ride of the board. Mum was pretty intuitive then because she knows where, she knew, I should say, the seduction of that whole lifestyle.
Yeah.
What it brings with it. Drugs, party, loose. And you're a kid at this stage. You're like 12. 13, you're going to high school.
Yeah, no, well, there's elements of the stuff that you talk about anywhere you go, rugby teams or surf clubs or whatever, but there's also the other stuff around surf club. You're around fit, healthy guys and girls getting out. It's an early morning community because the ocean's the best in the morning, so you're spending your time on the beach, you're staying healthy. I think that's probably some of the values that a surf club has. Like I'm back down there now. I train with a bunch of guys on a Tuesday morning ranging from 70 down. I think I'm the youngest down there now. So when I turn up there and it's this old, everything's got rust on it gym on a Tuesday morning. And when my knees are a bit cranky, I've got no excuse, mate. So there's a few older fellas in there. So it's cool to be part of that because now I'm not playing in a team. I'm not in that sort of team environment. It's kind of like this little guys group that gets up early and trains on a 5:15 on a Tuesday morning.
How good is that too? It's good, especially with the old guys. I'm one of the old guys. So you're at St. Pius. So what point did you realise that you could play footy?
Look, I represented a lot of rep teams growing up. I was competitive, younger of an older brother, so he's 18 months older than me. So everything we did was competition, mate. So if we're out in the surf and I see him catch a good wave, I'm not looking because he might check in and, he's got one up on me. And, we didn't play a lot of footy in the backyard, but, even stuff like if we're playing, PlayStation games, you'd have to play together because if we're playing against each other, it would end in not fights. Like we weren't fighters, but arguments and just, like a saltiness for a little bit. So, it was always games that we'd do together and stuff like that. But look, I think being the younger of an older brother, naturally you just become super competitive. So in terms of rugby, it was a sport. I liked the physicality of it.
Were you always solid?
Yeah, my dad's a Pom originally, so he came out and landed in Manly, and as Poms do or you do when you turn up somewhere, the beautiful thing about rugby is you get involved in that community, and he credits being involved in that sort of Manly circle as giving him a life out here and his network and his friends and meeting my mum eventually, who was from Concord, the inner west, so we very much that's why we're part of the surf club, part of the Manly Marlins and that sort of thing. And in terms of becoming good at footy, I think I loved the Wallabies when I was growing up. 99 World Cup, 2001. I go and watch them beat the Lions in the third test, which we've got coming out next year, which is hugely exciting. 2003, I went to the semi-final where they beat the Kiwis. Sterling Mortlock famously takes an intercept and runs. I was at the stadium when that happened, so fond memories of rugby, but never thought that, okay, that's something I'm going to do. It was very much like, I love the game, I love competing. And at each level you get to, or for me, very much it was, okay, this is a new chance to test myself. And then when you get comfortable and you feel like you play well and play well consistently, then you're like, okay, well, what's the next level look like? And it just goes on and on.
So, but was there somebody that you were looking up to? Like, I mean, when I was a kid, I was in rugby league terms, I always idolised a couple of particular individuals who were playing in the Canterbury Bankstown comp in those days. And typical kid, like, I sort of pretended to be them. And was there someone you idolised in rugby terms?
Yeah, there was probably three players. So George Grigg and Stephen Larkham, they were the 9-10. I never played 9 and 10, but I thought their combination was amazing. But the guy in particular that played my position was George Smith. So George Smith, he actually went to school right near my house at Cromer. So I was at Colorado Plateau, grew up. He was down at Cromer at high school, played for Manly Marlins, again, my club. So, there was that connection of where just location, right? And what I loved about George was he had impact on both sides of the ball. So I think some of the times the criticism of players play the same position as I do is you're either defensive or all attack. And I liked with George that he had impact on both sides of the ball and he was consistent. It wasn't rocks or diamonds. Every week was just amazing. So he was down at the Brumbies and I finished school and went down to the Brumbies. So I had a season and a bit with George, which was really cool.
So was that around? Was Timmy McGann around in those days? Was Tim McGann?
No, he wasn't.
He was before you?
Yeah.
He's much before you. Okay. So a couple of, because do you ever get, because he went off to play West Tigers, did you ever get seduced into thinking I'll go play rugby league?
No, not. I was
because just looking at you, I can see you playing as a back row or as a lock.
Yeah, I would have loved to.
Yeah, but
I was so hell bent on being a part of a Wallaby team and a Waratahs team and trying and win a World Cup, try and win a Bledisloe. And it wasn't until later in my career that you go, oh, could I have, had a little lick at that? But it's easy to say now, but I think the right time would be like Mark and Joseph are doing it well younger than I.
In the 20s, yeah.
But mid-20s, 26, 27, you're right, physically at a really good spot to do it. You're hungry, you know what your game and mentally your game can look like. Yeah, there's going to be different elements of what you need to do on the field, but mentally you know what you're about. I reckon that would have been a good time to do it.
So who was your favourite player to play with?
Oh, I've got plenty. I've got Bernard Foley, Rob Horn, Nick Phipps, Adam Ashley Cooper.
Why? Pick one and tell me why.
Oh, they're good friends, but I loved playing with guys who were consistent and competitive. They would just get on the field and it meant a lot to them.
In that they wanted to win.
Yeah, wanted to win. That's infectious to be around. Like there's a group of guys, rugby hasn't been, really the top of the log for a fair while now. So part of a crew going, hey, let's do our absolute utmost to try and get there. Now, it's a huge, exciting prospect. And it was tough, it's super competitive to try and get there and stay there. There's a difference between, one-off, good win here, but to have consistency over a long period of time, that's really hard. And that's what we're, trying to do as a team and being involved with your Michael Checkers, your Dave Rennies, great coaches, respectfully. That's what they wanted. And it's a lot of fun to be a part of. That's why I played. It's a tough game. Yes, you're well paid. Yes, you get to play footy for a living, all those sort of stuff, but might as well do it. You might as well rip in and try and get a couple, wins along the way.
So because Australian rugby is starting to show some signs now, but prior to more recently, it was looking a bit sorry. How important is it for 4 or 5 guys in a side to say we're going to win this, we got to get it together? I mean, does that start with a coach, or does that start with, let's call it the senior guys, or not even senior guys, just the team, 4 or 5 guys saying, listen, we've got to win this next, whatever it is. this next series, whatever the series is, and take it upon yourselves to do it. Was that something you guys were doing, like in your environment?
Oh, I tried to. I don't think we didn't get it right. Definitely part of a group that got it right once and almost twice. Well, it got into the final of the 2015 World Cup. We won super title in 2014 with a bunch of those guys that I mentioned. So look, it's going to take everyone within a squad to win something proper.
But does it mean everyone's got to get on board? Everyone's got to have the same attitude, or is there a small group that sort of drags everyone together along with it, like a comet? There's the comet, there's a tail, and the gravity of the comet pulls the rest. I mean, because I can't imagine trying to get 15 guys or a whole squad, whatever that is, 20 odd guys, all on the same page, like all be as keen to do something as the next bloke. If you get 4 or 5, I can see that happens. Like in rugby league, your spine wins your games. You get all the rest of the support, but just a good spine will win the games. You've got Penrith, look at Melbourne. And that's probably been the same for a long, long time. In rugby union, is there any sort of equivalent in terms of not necessarily a spine, but just in terms of the leadership group, the senior team, the senior guys?
Yeah, I think a spine's relevant in terms of, the importance of having, the right positions on the real influential positions on the field locked down. So I think.
Well, what are they? What are they in rugby union?
I mean, at this day and age, it'd be a tight head prop, tight head lock, 1 or 2 good back rowers, 9, 10 are always going to be important. And then I'm probably going to get slayed for this, but, because every position's important. But, then, backfield player.
A backfield player being, what's that mean?
Oh, sorry, a winger fullback.
A winger fullback.
Actually, probably no. Wingers, you could probably, actually a centre, a really good centre, 12, 13 centre, yeah.
Really? A centre?
Centre's really important.
Not a fullback?
Well, I mean...
That's interesting because, rugby league's a bit opposite there because you get fed the ball every 5th tackle or the fullback, so you need someone who can take the ball up every 5th tackle, but it's a different game. But rugby union centre, because that's interesting because they've gone and signed up Joseph as a centre. And I'm just wondering whether that is the game plan, that is the thinking right now.
For him as a centre, well, I mean, he's got the athletic prowess to play anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the luxuries.
He's big enough.
He's big enough, strong enough, agile enough, looks switched on enough to be able to get it all together. Centre's really hard defensively. You have to be a very...
As a defender, you mean? Or
as a defender.
Or defend against?
And, well, both.
Right.
Both. But as a defender, you are a critical part in... communicating what's going on. You've got a bit more time, so you've got vision. So you've got to make decisions around, the numbers you have, where you are on the field. So it's a really nuanced position.
Is that right?
13, yes.
So centre's
12,
calling
13, yeah. 12, 13.
So at centre, you're calling defensive positions. You're saying, hang on, move across here. You mean from that point of view, as a team, let's not call it team manager, but as a defensive manager, like fullback in rugby league is that person because he's always directing the position, or she if it's NRW, but always directing everyone into position because they can see everything from there. But you're saying centre and rugby union is really important in that regard.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow, that's interesting. So therefore, a centre is like sort of like a spine player for rugby union.
Yeah, and like I mean the thing. I don't want to say you have to have those positions, but I mentioned those guys up front because if you don't have a good set piece, you're not going to win Test rugby. Mention your 9 and 10, they're your quarterbacks of the game. They get the most touches, most hands on the ball, so that's obviously going to be a spine position. And then your communication from, your back 3 or your centres, and I'm not saying it's solely a 13 or it's solely a 12. We saw Israel go through the wing. His first debut was on the wing, scores a double in a Lions Test match. So he went through the wing, went to fullback, tried centre. So he was moving around a fair bit as well. So I'm not saying any one of those positions, but if you have a strong enough personality in and around that, but without doubt, your 3 and your number 4 or 5 are critical just in terms of a set piece.
So do you think it's important in rugby union to have? I don't like using the word because rugby union is even more worried about this sort of stuff, but like an enforcer up front.
Oh, mate, I'd love to have an enforcer in every team, yeah.
Like someone, an enforcer being someone everybody is going, oh, shit, I don't, the last thing I want to do is have to pack down against this guy or run at this guy or have him run at me.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think Bobby Valentini is our number 6 or 8 at the moment. It's becoming that for Australia. Traditionally a Wycliffe Palu, Todai Kefu, guys like that. But I think like growing up, I remember almost going to play club rugby, and the Wallabies sometimes had to come back down and play club rugby. And there was a player, Dan Vickerman, big second rower, and he was a guy that just took people like me out around the ruck. So if I'm trying to get a turnover or turn over the ball, I would have been, 18, 19 at this point. And this is what this guy did. And he, would break guys' ribs, he'd hit you. And this was when the game, there wasn't camera angles on every play like there is now. So you could get away with a little bit more.
6 foot, 5 or something?
Oh, yeah, big guy.
Giant.
Yeah, like one of the big locks, big locks. And that was his role, just to find you at a run. Yeah. And I meant before the game, I'm thinking, I'm playing for Manly. I think he was Sydney Uni player. You're thinking like he's taking up mental space before you've even played the game.
Yeah, and you're looking for him.
Well, yeah, looking for him. Or if you're not and he finds you in the game, well, you're definitely looking for him after that. So without doubt, I think there's a place for that. And, that's the tough thing with all these, contact rules and height rules and everything like that is you don't want the big man to be taken out of the game. And we're finding, I think, rugby union more than rugby league's tough because the game's played a lot at different levels. You've got the balls played on the ground, whereas rugby league is much more up and down the field. But rugby union, like you could probably slow-mo every ruck and there'd be head contact. So how do you get that balance right? Because you don't want to take the big man out of the game because that's what makes it awesome.
Well, it's because that's one of the things I wanted to talk to you about. Rules. There's a lot of rules in rugby union. I get confused, but if you the point you just made about big men, what's interesting about that, and by the way, Joseph Swiley actually suffered this in the State of Origin game because he is 6'5", and he tackled someone who's much, much smaller. Whether he could have pulled out of the tackle or not, but ended up having head contact, and that was his last State of Origin. He only played 10 minutes. He never got to play the rest of the game. And Joseph is not a vindictive style person. It's not his go, as far as I've observed. But it was just by virtue of the fact, a little bit of carelessness, but by virtue of the fact he's very big guy and smaller guy. Rugby union, you can't tackle above the nipple, right?
At club level, you can. There's a bit more at a test level, yeah. But if there's any chin, you're in strife potentially.
So do you think that it's not as interesting a game because it's a contact game if the big men can't do their thing and take some risk that there might be some head knock? In other words, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'5". I try to tackle you. You're not 6'5". There's a risk in there that I can't adjust because you might just fall down a little bit and I can't adjust quick enough because all this stuff's in a split second. My God, like these things happen so fast. And then I might accidentally hit you. Do you think there's too much of that in rugby? Therefore, as a result of that, too many rules around that stuff. Cards, you're off for the game. Team's down a player.
Well, yeah. I mean, safety needs to be first and foremost.
How do we balance this stuff up, though?
But you're putting yourself onto the field in a contact sport. So there's going to be an element of risk and going to be an element of getting it wrong. Like you said, there's no perfect way to balance a guy that's 5'0" and a guy that's 6'6". There's going to be some disparity there. Now, in terms of the recklessness, and you take a risk, you make a call. Well, you got to try and make sure that call's right. That's like trying to take a shot at goal. You got to aim up and make sure it goes between the sticks. I think it's the same with getting a shot appropriately. And I think it can be played safe, but we've also got to accept the fact that as soon as you are running into each other at full pace, there's an element of risk and an element of things that you can't control. Yeah, boot slips out. Unfortunately with Reece Walsh, there's definitely slippage before Suaalii hits. Yeah, so and saying that, I think Suaalii though made the decision to try and iron him out and hit him in the right spot, but at that pace, but it just didn't work out that way, and it was a shocking one to see. But in terms of like a perfect storm, it was that. I mean, had Reece Walsh carried it the right height, it's one of the hits of the century. Unfortunately, it's the hit of the century with all the wrong sort of marrings about it. But there's got to be an acceptance of a rugby accident that happens. But I think that was dealt with probably the right way.
I think so, except that I don't think it was reckless. I don't think there was any, like, you can either say an individual intended to hurt somebody, and we don't know what anyone's intent is because we can't look in their brain, or they were reckless to the outcome.
I think it was pretty clear he was trying to get a hold of him.
But he wasn't trying to hit him.
No, he wasn't trying to hit him in the head.
Yeah,
agreed.
And he totally was trying to iron him out, but like hit him in the chest as opposed to hit him in the head. The question then becomes a value judgment then. The referee makes a decision, Ashley Klein made a decision that as far as he was concerned, it was either intentional or reckless. Either way, you're off. But then the game just completely turns. We don't have in rugby league what you have in rugby union. I think it's like 10 or 20 minutes later you can send a replacement on.
Yep.
Yeah. Is that just at test level or is that every level?
Across now,
everything.
Yeah.
So which makes sense. That's to me quite a sensible thing. I mean, in rugby league, it needs to think about that sort of stuff. But because at the end of the day, the game is a game of entertainment. And who are we entertaining? We're entertaining the audience, the spectators. And half the audience, let's make an assumption, but half the audience goes to one team, half the audience goes to the other team, especially in the state of origin, for example. So therefore, it's unfair for the audience to some extent because we didn't see the contest we wanted to see. We wanted to see at least 13 on 13 or 15 on 15. I don't want to see 14 versus 15. And I don't even care if it's for 20 minutes because that 20 minutes turns the game. So if you're in 14, you're playing against 15, even if you get a replacement player on, comes back on, and is it 20 minutes?
Yeah.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
My legs are gone.
If the player goes off and it's deemed a red card, so you'll get a yellow card, which is 10 minutes.
Yep.
And if they go, no, that's the severity is worse than that, he can't come back on, you can bring a different player on after that 20 minutes.
After 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So during that 20-minute period, the 14 side is that they're cooking their legs and every other part of their body, especially if you're up front. So you're getting cooked. The guy comes on fresh, the person comes on fresh, that's okay, it's good, but it doesn't account for the 14 other players who are just completely stuffed. So all of a sudden I have and this is a general question I want to put to you about rugby union. These sorts of rules can affect the audience's affection for the game. And as a result of you lose audience migrates to something else. They go watch something else because they love sports, so they go somewhere else. And once you get latched onto something else, it's hard to get them back. And games need audiences. That's where you make your money because you sell the audience to the advertiser. The advertiser pays you the money pays the players. Players get attracted to play the game because they're going to get paid good money. It takes Joseph out because he's a way outsider in terms of what he gets paid.
Yeah.
But the rest of the players, if you want to get the best game possible here in Australia, you got to pay the players the best amount of money they can get. Otherwise, they're going to go and play rugby league or play AFL when they're little kids. Their parents go, "What are you doing that for?" Or even cricket. Top level cricket pays really well.
Absolutely.
So, and a lot of these players can either play rugby league and play AFL, they can play rugby union, they can play cricket too. I don't know what the hell it is, but a lot of sports people, you probably can play good golf. I'd imagine you'd be a good golfer.
Terrible.
But you can either play tennis or golf or cricket. I mean, there's something weird about sportsmen, athletes. They can do everything pretty much. So what do you think the state of rugby union is then? Do they need to just chill out a little bit, relax a bit?
Well, I think there needs to be a level of acceptance that it's a dangerous game that you can try and make safer. So what I mean by that is you're running into each other at full pace. There's an element of risk, but that's kind of why guys play it. Aside from some of the, I met some guys over in Dubai just in the last week. They're 45, playing rugby still, just casually. They just love it. The contact, the camaraderie, all that stuff. There's something about it that people are drawn to it. So there's an element of risk, like there is going in the surf, jumping in your car, all that sort of stuff. And you can always choose not to play it. Now, in terms of the product, I also don't want to see a product where Reece Walsh is getting that and happening often, So I think that happened in the first game, but it ended up being a remarkable series. And I don't know, I wouldn't know the stats around the second and third game, but I don't remember there being a significant one like that again.
There wasn't, nothing.
So the players adjust and manage and get maybe, and there was no shortage of contact in that third game. Bloody hell, like those guys are taking years off their lives. A remarkable game to watch. One of the best contact sports games I've seen. That third one.
Certainly one of the toughest I've ever seen.
Oh, it was incredible. So
therefore, good product. Okay.
Yeah,
good product. Let's go to rugby union.
Mm-hmm.
What does rugby union got to do to get an equivalent product?
Okay, so Suolii's game in England was a pretty good product. his debut. Down to the wire, good contest.
Soft hands too, amazing.
Yeah, he's got great finesse, doesn't he?
He jumps up and just handed the ball over, like literally put it into his hands like that.
Mate, can I just talk on that week? Like that is a big that's a big test no matter what you're talking about. Playing at Twickenham, it's always a big test. But to do that without playing a professional game of rugby union, yeah, he's played massive games of rugby league and whatnot. As a debut game in a tough spot. We're talking about the centres being a tough spot, and he's got some great communicators around him in some of the players with him, Lenny Katau particularly, and Andrew Kellaway in that backfield. But that was an incredible performance, out the gate. Like that was remarkable.
And actually, a lot of people I know saying they want to watch the next game because of that. Because we won, that helps.
Yeah.
But also
we love beating the Poms. Yeah.
We do, and we haven't been doing it very often. But winners are grinners, as you know. But watching, a lot of people watched the second game because of hoping that Joseph would be selected or at least get off the bench and play, which he did. But that's that. Do you think this is a strategic move then by Rugby Union, the ARU, Australian Rugby Union, that is a strategic way of getting people back to the Rugby Union game as an audience?
Playing Suaalii.
Yep. Or signing him for that matter. I mean, is this a masterstroke by Hamish McLennan? Like, is it a masterstroke of signing up someone like that and having a lot of vision that this guy could well bring the people back to the game?
Oh, I mean, if it does...
Do you think it will?
Do I think it will? I think he's going to be a star in the game. I think he's physically too good not to, but then injury, how the team functions. We know that one guy can't carry a team in union or league or AFL. So you've got to have a good team around you. They're starting to see some great shoots in that team, well coached, starting to get confident. So things like that. The thing that we know we've got coming as Lions is a massive injection of cash and interest in the country for Rugby Union. And then you've got a home World Cup. Which is just the third. Yeah, no, home World Cup 27. 27. So the team has time to build. So that's the third biggest event in the world behind, soccer,
is that right?
Soccer World Cup.
In terms
Olympics,
of
viewership, yeah. So massive thing coming into our country in that time. So it's a hugely exciting one. Now, is Suaalii going to be a big part of that? Well, all signs point to yes of what's been done in a very short period of time. But then there's so many factors, within that. I don't think he's signed till 2027. I'm not sure if he is. If he is,
he's got a 5-year deal.
Oh, okay, then he is. So, he's got to be managed well. I think, you take a look at some of our, other codes around the world or codes in our own country who manage top line play as well. We can't just expect him to play 80 minutes every week, train hard, blah, blah, blah. How can we get the best out of him? And, Joe Schmidt, who's at the top at the moment, who's the Wallaby coach, has a really good understanding of that coming from an island background. He managed to do that with an island team and turn them into a well-managed unit. So hopefully that's able to be done with Joseph alongside other key spine guys like we talked about earlier.
So if Australia, how do we get... I mean, I had Stevie Hoyles here, and he didn't hold back. But how do we improve rugby union at every level now? So let's just take it right down from, winning games on the global level, the Australian side, then down into the the Waratahs, etc. Then down into Waratahs, Brumbies, and all the other sides, and then bring it down to the club level, but then bring it down to the school level, so that rugby union can attract the best possible talent, because AFL's not got a big march on both rugby league and rugby union, in terms of New South Wales in particular. A lot of schools they play soccer or AFL. They don't play rugby league or rugby union. The private schools still do, admittedly, but how do we turn that around?
There's AFL in some of the private schools now. That was
totally
blasphemy 30 years ago.
100%. But is it because and I'd like to get your view on this, is it because parents are starting to think both games, rugby league and rugby union, are too violent or too much contact? And therefore, does it actually mean, is it correct that we should stop the tackling no matter what? That's such that it might cause a head injury?
Oh, time will tell in terms of what the impact of head injury is going to be. No one actually knows for certain. There's definitely elements of, that contact to the head's going to have an adverse effect on your body like many other things, but how that impacts individuals and how that all works within the ecosystem of someone's actual life. I think time will tell on that, and hopefully we can get a clearer understanding. And that might be the actual thing that, tips it in the right or the wrong way. But until that point, it's everyone's own decision, everyone's body and everyone's way of going about their lives. There's plenty of risk out there, and risk usually leads to fun being had, to a certain extent. If you don't take any risk, you're sitting in your house in a bubble.
But parents made the decision when the kids are young. So your parents made a decision about you. You're going to play footy because that's what your dad did and you're part of the Manly scene, blah, blah, blah. But let's say your mum said, hey, you said to your dad in relation to Michael, you, listen, I don't want him to grow up, brain damage.
Yeah.
He's going to play AFL. He's going to play soccer.
Well, AFL's not a clear cut.
I understand
and
that.
Soccer, they can't header anymore. So,
but they sort of AFL will promote it as being less contact. But by the way, there's just as many concussions in AFL there is in rugby league and rugby union. But let's just hypothetical. Mum says, he's going to play soccer. School's got soccer. You would never have got to where you got to in rugby union, obviously, because you start off a soccer and you become part of a soccer thing. You might play for Australia in the.
I've got two left feet, so it's probably fair.
Yeah. They might not have played for Australia.
Definitely not.
So and then therefore rugby union would have missed out on Mike Looper, which means they missed out on a good player, an Australian player, which means they've got less resources to excel. So therefore, I think, both for rugby league and for rugby union, to a lesser extent AFL, that all this discussion about concussion, and by the way, it's very important, don't get me wrong.
Very. Yeah, it is very.
It could be an existential threat to the game relative to Australia, how we play, how we recruit and how we play the game compared to, say Argentina or, say, compared to Ireland, if it's not as big an issue. And I don't know if it is as big an issue in those joints, those countries, what we see here. And the more the media gets onto it, the media is making a big thing of it at the moment. Like it's become the latest and greatest discussion. I mean, I see some neurologists now are starting to talk about it, about CTE and all these sorts of things. But at the same time, the game's is an aggressive game. It's a contact game. You got to have that because the audience love that. It's an arena. It is like this. It is putting gladiators in a room. For me, watching rugby union, I love rugby union when it's the tough forwards are really just bashing each other. It's because it's vicarious. It's not me doing it. It's watching them do it. I get pleasure out of that. It sounds ridiculous. I don't know what it is, but I do. How do you balance this stuff up? What do you say? What would you be saying? Because you're just fresh out of the game.
I think the thing
and I can see you got a few injuries. I'm looking at your left, your right here. That's like it's definitely cauliflower. The right one's about the same. The left one. You got a few scars at the top of your head. You got a nice cross on the top of your head. Like it looks like someone's gone like that swashbuckling pioneer or whatever we call them. But
the eyebrows have copped it, mate. They're going to be rolled over soon.
The eyebrows are stuff. You got a few scars going down your I suppose. You'll be in the midst of it. What do you think about the existential threat to the game that you love?
The game that I love, it's a real challenge. I think that the steps that are being taken are really important. The management of head knocks has been, even in my short time, in the last 15 years, has changed remarkably. And that's fantastic. The idea that if someone gets a head knock, that it's not frowned upon, that they go, hey, like I'm not right. And to really be supported through that process to get them back on the field, that they're not having repetitive injuries or brain injuries. I think that's really important. I think there's got to be objective measures done on the impacts and ongoing. How you do that is going to be the challenge because you can't get any of the results until someone's post-mortem a lot of the time, right?
That's for CTE for sure.
Yeah, for that sort of thing. So, until that point, how can you manage? They've brought out mouth guards that test events.
Yeah, the mouth guards, they measure every impact.
Yes,
and in a sense, got a little sensor and sends it back to a control center,
which again is not perfect yet, because what might affect you may not affect me, or what affects me might not affect you. So how does the threshold become safe?
But they can build up baselines for you.
Okay.
And they can say, okay, Michael got knocked out and he was sick for 3 weeks, vomiting with migraine headaches as a result of this level of impact.
Yeah. Okay.
Mark got the same level of impact, but it didn't have the same effect on Mark. Therefore, for Michael, we've got to watch when he trains. Next time he gets hit like that, we've got to pull him aside and say, okay, you're not playing this weekend.
So really lean on data there.
Yeah, it's data driven, and you've got to build up it's not a universal data, but it's data a relation to yourself for individuals. And I think that's great. I'm all for it, by the way. I'm not against it. I'm all for modernising the game. Don't want to kill the game, but modernise the game around the contact, because this game, your game, the rugby league game, is about contact. It's not about guys making breaks. We love the contact. We want to see open
clean
play.
Contact. Yeah, you want to see clean contact. Otherwise, you go watch UFC, which again is like a product to go see it for a certain reason.
Yeah.
But you want to see someone get smashed in union or league cleanly,
dominated.
That's like, and that's great. That's the feeling you want. Like the one, that we've talked about it a bit, but that hit's not the one you want to see. The one in Origin. So you want to see a clean one, because then everyone's back up. They're bouncing their feet. You've got 14 or 13 or 15 players still on the field, and the contest goes on, and then then it becomes the back and forth like we saw in the third Origin. So. It's of course it's going to be a threat, and it should be a threat, and hopefully like threat to anything. And you can tell me because of your time through business and everything that you've done. But challenges, hopefully, then you sharpen the knife or sharpen the sword, and it becomes a better product, a cleaner product, a safer, but without you losing its core. And then talking about, well, what's the perception or what's the sentiment around this? Well, don't shy away from the fact that these are contact sports. They're a contact sport. That's why guys and girls like playing it. That's the element of it. And within there's some risk, and we're working our best to make that safe. But there is risk, and like you jump in a car, you're playing on the field knowingly of some of that risk. Because
it's interesting. I've been reflecting on this for a while now, and I think rugby league has actually. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but has adapted to this process of what public opinion is. And rugby league has become, which is why we're getting a lot more Islander players playing the game or fit into the game a lot better. So if you go back 25, 30 years ago, or even back further, it was just big, tough guys, slogging it out against each other. There was nowhere near the athleticism that we have today. But a lot of the Islander boys, they're big, tall fellas, they're strong, they're very athletic. They can sort of run fast, they can sidestep, they can pass a ball, they got great eye-hand coordination. And the game has sort of adapted to suit them because it's gone away from that heavy-duty clash, which is sort of – so now I think the spectator's more interested, and somehow, I don't know who's done it, but somehow we've been sort of pushed around to be more interested in the athleticism of the game and what this particularly great athlete can do once he or she gets outside a player, or can put a ball on the inside, like beautiful soft hands, into another player going through a gap. The Tedesco type player, those sorts of guys. Do you think, is rugby union starting to move into that, watching the beautiful player as opposed to the beautiful game, the beautiful player, like it is the Joseph Sualis, that like wonderful athletes who can just turn on a sixpence, as opposed to the tough bastards like you and those guys who are jamming up the front all the time and just getting belted left, right and centre. Is that the future of rugby union as a spectator sport?
I don't think so. I think, and I hope not. And the reason I hope not is that rugby fits in the short, fat, stubby guy and Israel Folau into the game. And that's the really difficult thing with, the argument of the entertainment side of things and, what the game of rugby is, because scrums, I've sat on the side of a lot of scrums and it's boring to be on the field when you've got a lot of repacks and there's 10 minutes, which is an eighth of the game, that's spent on repacking a scrum. Yeah, that's not a great product. Or there's line outs and they're confusing around what the penalties blown for, because it's a lot of the time left to interpretation. But within that, you're fitting different athletes who are really critical. And so you can have Israel Folau, Suaalii, Wendell come back and Lottie come back, all fit them in the same back line. But if their scrum sucks, they're going to have a really tough day at the office. I don't care who you are.
Yeah, be sitting out there doing nothing.
And that, lends itself to the next thing. And that's, what are probably a threat of, all the codes in Australia are. But, when Rugby Union isn't doing well, is it's not fast enough. It's not enough ball in play time. So, Test rugby, 30 to 40 minutes. 40 minutes would be a lot of ball in play rugby time, whereas league averages over 50 minutes, I believe, or something around that number. So in terms of actually action happening on the field, there's a lot. But I remember playing in a game. It was a test series against, I think it was the French back in 2014. We beat them well in the first test. In the second test, I think we might have won 9-6, so not a try scored in the game. So 3 penalties for us, 2 for them. We win. And the papers the next morning are going. The media are going. This is what a shocking game. What a boring outing for both teams.
For a spectator,
everything like that. And I can sympathise. In the UK, it was what an arm wrestle. Right. what an absolute physical set piece. So
that's Australian media you're talking about?
Australian media, comparatively to the UK. The UK, I remember because someone sent me going, and I saw the article. I'm like, oh, geez, that can be. And I'm not having a crack at Australian media, but what we've got here is 3 codes playing consecutively across the course of the weekend. And if you have a game like that, and then you see a rugby league or an AFL game with over 100 points and league, a lot of tries scored, that, oh God, like there wasn't even a try scored in this game. And it can be an easy right, can't it? That, this game's boring.
Could that be an explanation there for why, England, Ireland, even Wales have become much better relative to Australia, because the style of the game and the dynamics of the game are much more acceptable over there than they are here? Because, like you say, like you can watch a fast-moving rugby league game here, you can watch an AFL game back and forth, like just literally up and down the field all day. They'll run 20. Everyone runs 20-odd kilometres a game. So there's lots of movement. Do you think that might be a reason why we're not as popular in rugby union terms for audiences and for recruitment as, say, the UK, France, Ireland, particularly Ireland, is?
Well, I mean, there's less codes over there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Less to choose from.
You're less to choose from.
Therefore, as a result of being less to choose from, you're much more patient as an audience and media. You're much more patient in terms of what you're prepared to allow to happen in the game, because you're not saying, hang on, I can go down the road and watch a game of AFL because it's really quick, and I can watch it. And I'm because all of us have got ADHD, all audiences these days, because we've got so many things going on. We've got Instagram, this going on, WhatsApp going on, conversation with the game. We're sending a message to their friends. We're all sort of on it the whole time. So, do you think that Australia is suffering because we've got too many choices? In relative
Australian
sense.
rugby?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that, Steve, went pretty hard when he was here. Steve Hoyle was
there. Yeah.
And look, I think there's been a range of reasons why we haven't, mate, there's been a couple of things that have happened. We were very successful late 90s or early 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. And since then, a lot of teams have caught up to Australia, New Zealand, England, really. Through that time. So it's now teams 1 to 10 in World Rugby are really solid. So we've gone through this sort of patch of winning 50 odd percent, in international. And I think, Steve talking about the Super Rugby teams, I think that balance of the amount of rugby teams, so you get more players playing together, the competition up, I think I reflect on my own career. The times that I was playing my best rugby was when I was in risk or jeopardy of losing my position.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that's what you need within, you could say that in any sport. So did we get too thin across that period? I don't know. But I think, if you're having a forward-looking focus, which is what we need to do in rugby in the country. But unfortunately, the Melbourne Rebels are now no longer. But all that team's been dispersed now to all the other teams. So now you've got a closer, I guess you got more competition for less spots. which in my opinion can only create a good outcome. So I think we'll see next year some of the Super Rugby teams doing really, really well, because you've just the push. It's a compounding effect. Like, it's not a 1+1 or it's you and me going for the same position. It's okay, we're going for the same position. It's not, we get a little bit better. We'll both get a lot better. And I think that's what we're going to see happen.
So if that's interesting you say about the Melbourne. So you're saying less teams is actually better?
Well, I'm saying the right amount of teams is
okay. Right amount of teams. Okay,
I'm not saying less is better.
Yeah,
because then you'd say one team's good, but I don't think that's what we'd want. So no.
And and do you think it's important that we have in Super Rugby we have teams coming out of rugby cities or rugby states, as opposed to trying to jam something into Melbourne, which is not really a rugby union place?
I'm actually interested in your opinion on this, because we are a country flooded with different options. So in terms of a business thing, do you stick to where you're strong? Do you try and spread?
I do.
Australia thinks Australian rugby, or we've tried so long to capture the West, and it's bloody hard to capture the West. AFL's done well to get in there with GWS, but certainly rugby league has a good stranglehold on that area. So you go out broad, or you go outside, and do you lose where you're strong? And I'm not saying we've done that or that's what's happening or should happen, but there's almost a question posed to you.
Well, TV drives it. TV does drive it. It's so audiences in Melbourne are important to broadcasters, because broadcasters say, I just don't want to broadcast in Sydney. I'm broadcasting something on at prime time. I need to be able to collect the Melbourne audience. Like rugby league, for example, is a good example. They want to have, you'll watch rugby league. If you look at the way the draw goes for Friday night games, you get a lot of Brisbane games, because Brisbane play a lot of nights on Friday nights, because Queenslanders love rugby league. And they're really good patrons of the game on television. So that drives a lot more eyeballs onto the TV show on Friday nights, which means a lot more advertising. So the broadcaster does much better. So I can understand the dough comes from the broadcaster for most of these games, for rugby league, AFL, Rugby Union.
Of course.
So you've got to sort of try and win over the broadcaster in terms of the money they're going to give you, broadcast rights. So you've got they nearly insist on having a Victorian team, so that you can get people in Victoria watching the game. I sort of understand that part, but I agree with what you're saying too, though. I think you're saying was more a question to me, I think, but should we just concentrate on the territory we are in already and be really good at that, own it? Because the moment you start looking at another territory like Victoria, you're going to lose some of your attention to where you've already been good at. And the moment you do that, someone's going to come and try and cut your lunch and try and get it underneath you, which is what the AFL's been doing. I don't know, they've got a bigger checkbook. They've just been better than everyone at it, and they're everywhere. They're in the schools, they're in New South Wales, they're out the west of Sydney now. They're very good at building the narrative that it's less dangerous. There's less contact, but there's just as many head injuries.
Well, you're actually getting tackled from 360.
Yeah.
So the good thing with rugby league and union is it's up and down.
I know where you are.
So you're bracing. You're next. You're getting prepared, unless you're getting which we've all had, a good shot from the side. Someone just makes a great read and you don't see it coming. They're the horrible ones. But that would happen a lot in AFL. You get tackled from behind, or you're playing low. You see a lot of the ones that get their head on hips when they're challenging for the ball on the ground. So again, you're still crossing a white line with contact sport. There's a risk there. But yeah, to your point, I'd love to know what the answer would be for all the codes. And I often wonder with the rugby league, rugby union thing, I think there's totally a place where they can feed off each other. Is a marquee mark going to come back to rugby union, and is a Suoli going to go back to league? And can there ever be a game where there's a cross code game or run off the back of each other? I think there's totally an environment where more eyeballs can be put on if you utilize both of them in the right way that suits. Right now, currently it's a 12-round boxing match where it's rugby league versus rugby union. But I think it's one of those ones where they can coexist and bounce off each other.
Basically, the AFL is the enemy, is what you're saying.
I didn't say that, but yes,
yes, you did. So you're involved with recovery.
Yeah.
What you're an ambassador for them? What's your deal with it?
Yeah, I was initially an investor, and then as I'm starting to work out what the next chapter is, I'm doing some work as their health, high performance and wellness advisor.
So explain recovery.
Recovery is two things. First, well, it's a couple of things now.
Tell us how it's spelled first if someone wants to go find it.
RCVRI.
RCVRI.
Recovery. Yeah. So it was Recovery. We rebranded for a couple of reasons due to patents in the US. But it's retail for high performance and wellness. So sauna, ice bath, compression, float tanks, hyperbaric chamber, some reoxy machines which help with VO2. So a range of services there that as started in Coogee with Stephen Hoyles in 2019, has since gone to Cronulla, Manly, and soon to be in the CBD, just off Martin Place there, and the US and Toronto. So
I think is it LA? Isn't it LA? Aren't you go? Isn't Steve going to LA? Or
Hermosa Beach. So opening in Hermosa Beach next year.
Right, next year. Right, and who's behind it now? I mean, who's behind Recovery, the business itself?
So the three founders are Steve Hoyles, Nick Bardetta, and Trevor Falsom.
And Trevor Falsom being the Trevor Falsom from Investable.
Yes.
So he's got a fund.
Yes.
And he's a mad Randwick supporter, isn't he? Is he a Randwick supporter? Is Trevor?
He's originally through Queensland, but yeah, he's been here for he's part of the Randwick Mafia now.
Yeah, Randwick Mafia, correct. And I noticed that there's a strong franchise in the one in Coogee. Is that part of it? Is the idea to get a Pilates, which is the strong franchise, a Pilates type business as part of the recovery system? So in other words, and you can go into a Pilates class and then walk straight into the recovery. Is that part of what's going on there? Is that the thinking?
So two different models. So Strong's franchise based.
Yep.
But that was F45 that Stephen managed for years and have now changed to Strong.
Right. Okay.
But that's not the intention with every site. I think the other side of things that Recovery is doing is powered by Recovery. So we've got a mobile unit that'll go around to certain events. Yeah.
Like cold bath?
Yeah, cold bath sauna. So that hopefully going over to
a mobile
unit. So
oh wow. Put that on the back of a trailer or something.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting. And then a lot of buildings with their end of trip facilities wanting to give their employees wellness. So we can come in and consult and do some bespoke for business. And we've actually put one in Strong Pilates up in Queensland as well. So that's great. And we've just launched a hydration product as well. So
what's that? It's a drink, obviously.
Yeah, sachet at the moment, and soon to be a ready to drink. Yeah.
As in sodium, potassium, and magnesium. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Any sugar in it?
No sugar, mate.
Good man.
Yeah, nice and clean.
I'm glad about that because that's important. Just having those three salts because hydration is such a big deal, especially if I'm going to go and sit in one of your infrared saunas.
Yeah.
And I'm going to walk out dehydrated. So I've tried the one at Coogee. Wellesley invited me and my son up there. We went up there and I'm never sure whether I should go infrared water second or should I go the cold plunge and go to the infrared. What's your go-to?
Well, the traditional. So we try and do the traditional.
What is it?
Infrared.
So you warm up first.
So, it depends what you want to get out of it, right? So I think the morning, a lot of people like to finish on cold. So do your hot and then finish on cold. But what we see is, within the half an hour or hour slots is people go hot to cold, or a lot of, I think, my mum and my wife included like to finish on hot because they want to come out of there freezing.
Because, it's funny because we went hot, cold. No, it's another one. We went cold, hot, and cold. And
you went the pain first, straight into the cold.
Yeah, because my son said, I can't let you get in that. Yeah. So we got in and, but I actually felt a bit cold for a couple more hours. It took me, because I'm old bloke, it took me a bit of time, my blood to get back into my system. But I felt amazing. I felt like I just slept for 10 hours. My body felt really good, really good.
Yeah.
And I was only in the water for maybe, 3-4 minutes. Would that be
about
right?
Yeah, good hit.
Yeah. And my hand, I couldn't put my hands in because I got bad arthritis in my thumbs, and I could really feel it when I put my hands. So I actually had a little bit girly. Not to say girls do this, but I was being a bit girly. I had my hand out of the water, just sort of above the water, I should say. But I had the rest of my body in it. And I think, what's amazing for me is that all of a sudden there are certain people in this world and in particular in our country, and people I'm talking to have become so much more aware of the importance of these sorts of testing yourself, pushing yourself to do something you actually don't really feel like doing, like getting in a cold plunge. I think it was 3 or 4 degrees. Would that be about right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 3 or 4 degrees water. I mean, just the thought of it and how it's good for your mentality. I actually felt, I don't know, I'm not your, town crier for
You're not
recovery.
spruiking it, but thank you.
And I don't get paid I'm not getting paid anything by recovery, anything like this. But this is the reality of whether it was Recovery's cold plunge or anyone else's cold plunge. Well, so much so I bought myself one. So I bought a cold plunge. So
awesome.
The feeling that I get from it was amazing. Like my mental feeling, physically I felt pretty good. I don't know if it really took away my arthritis or inflammation. It did for a short period of time for sure. But I got a mental clarity out of it, at the cold mostly. I felt amazing. The infrared sauna, I think, is better for physically. It's really good for me physically. It makes me feel quite better the next day. I sleep better that night and I feel better the next day. But the cold it gives me a mental clarity. What do you get from it?
Yeah, no, so I mean, I hated it for the majority of my career. Towards the back end, I go, okay, well, not that I finished old or anything like that in terms of a rugby player, but I needed to start, if I wanted to train how I wanted to play and I wanted to be consistent on the field, then I felt like I needed to start upping that. And so, I mean, there was certainly, it's good for your inflammation. It gives you that, a bit of a physiology boost, like when you get out, the endorphins seem to kick. But yeah, I think that what you're saying, you're like, oh yeah, like in a weird way, like, oh,
it's weird. I can't explain it.
I did that. Yeah, got it. Feel good. You feel pumped. So I mean, ideally, like if you can have if particularly you've got your own, but cold in the morning because your body's heating up. So your body's cool overnight, let you sleep, and your body starts heating up as the day goes on. So you want to sort of get in the cold in the morning and allow it to heat up. And I mean, don't just jump in the cold and then sit down for ages, do some movement after, go for a walk, get the body moving, the muscles moving, and should just feel electric for a couple of hours. And that's proven. I think one of the things with COVID is people, really started to look at the longevity side of things and what can they do aside from, once they get back out there to make them feel better and, stay healthy. And then sauna at night's great. So it will heat you up, but your body's going through this pattern of where you're starting to cool down and get ready for sleep. So it almost spikes that feeling and that sensation. And, when you sweat, again, releases endorphins, gets your toxins out, everything like that. So yeah, that sort of, you can definitely do them complementary because it gives you that shock and that change. But yeah, if you had to choose one at either side of the day, you'd go with that.
And would you ever thought to yourself, if you go back to when you were 20, 12, 13 years ago, 19, 20, that you would be having this conversation talking about cold plunge, not because you would have done ice baths for training or after games, stuff like that, but post-career that you'd be talking about infrared saunas and ice baths or cold plunge for mental recovery, physical recovery, outside of footy?
No. I'd go for a surf or go hang out with my mates.
Or
some place.
Have a few beers.
So have a few too many beers. You know. Yeah, no, I've got a sauna in my backyard.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, not only is it a good place to feel good and everything, but we got 2 young kids. So me and my wife jump in there at the end of the day and just have a debrief on the shit that they give us, after they finally get put down at night. So no, there's some great benefit to it.
And just finally, I mean, because you're in this game now, how often, to get the proper health benefits out of a sauna, let's call it an infrared sauna for the moment, how many times a week do you need to do it, and for how long? What is a sort of recommended period?
Oh, well, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. So there's, your Hubermans of the world give out great information on that, and they're the standard on. He does a lot around, that sort of stuff. So there's different ways to do it. So to do it, less, but you do a bigger hit. So
is that like 30 minutes or 40 minutes?
Yeah. But you can do like a 20-minute, have a little rinse, go back in, do another 20 minutes, have a rinse and, finish off, or, shorter, whatever time works. Or you can do 15 minutes a day, daily, but your body does pick up a little bit of a, not resilience, but it gets used to
tolerance.
A little bit. Tolerance. Perfect. Yeah. So I think in terms of an ice bath, and this is again a Huberman, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, and people can say that, but it's like a total of 12 minutes a week, and that'll give you that's your minimum effective dose of cold bath. So if you're doing cold, and the cold thing's interesting, like it seems that with recovery facilities, guys like to get it really cold because it's the test, but It needs to be cold enough that you get a shock when you jump into it. You get that.
It doesn't need to be 3 degrees.
It doesn't need to be 3 degrees, but what we've seen and what, being in a footy team, when you get it really cold, guys are like, ooh,
Yeah, man up.
Yeah. So, it's 3 degrees. You can go and tell everyone it's 3 degrees, there's that part of it. But no, it's just getting that sort of and you can get that cold shower and, or going in the ocean at certain times of the year. That'll give you that effect. But 12 minutes across the course of a week should do that.
And finally, just on hyperbaric, just explain, what is hyperbaric chamber? I mean, explain what we're talking about here.
So you put yourself into a high oxygenated environment.
So just explain what it looks like in a minute.
Well, the ones that we have in our facilities, and they can look different, but we have, mate, it's like sitting in it's sitting in this chair effectively that you can recline in, but it's a little dome around you, and you can have a little desk, enclosed. So you shut this thing, you put a sort of a bar over the top, and you press start, and it just starts filling with oxygen. It's kind of feels like you're going up in a plane, so your ears will pop. It fills it to like a fully oxygenated environment, and the purpose and the pressure goes up like it would in a plane. The point of it is to oxygenate your blood more than you would in normal day to day, and that just improves getting that part or red blood cells to different parts of the body more,
which carry the oxygen
more. So really good for chronic injury, really good for sleep. I used it a fair bit. I had some calf and Achilles tendon issues, so I was in there 2 to 3 times a week to try and speed up that recovery process. Really good for post-surgery. Big in Japan, and some good study in Japan, that type of environment. So, that's a really, really popular product.
Well, I'm not going to buy a hyperbaric chamber, but I've been thinking about it, to be honest. I don't know if they're expensive. I wouldn't have a clue, but I have been thinking about it because, when you get a my age, I got a million injuries that I accumulated over many, many years. And
a body well used, mate.
Yeah, body well used, exactly. Well lived in, put it that way. I want to say thank you, legend. And you are a legend. Thanks very much for coming into the show today. And all the best with the recovery. And are you going to take over when Hoyles goes to America? We've announced that he's a Ramwood coach, by the way.
No, he's gone. He's gone.
He's gone? He's gone? Good, because I didn't want to get him in trouble.
No, he's over there.
Are you going to take over Ramwick?
I'm not taking over Ramwick. No. I'll be staying in my lane. They're going to go and be spreading doing their rugby thing and spreading the love over there in America and opening up the Toronto and LA facilities. But very much, it's a great thing about the rugby community. Great thing about when you are thinking about transitioning and what that sort of is going to look like post a career, or whether that I'm in post career moment at the moment, but. You get a great network, a great bunch of people that are willing to help if you ask, and happy to keep you involved. So
that's true, by the way. The rugby union community is very tight.
Yeah. I think sport community is in general. Been involved with a few things post career that. Athletes and, businessmen and, whatever, we all have transitions in life. And I think if you're willing to ask for a bit of help and how that looks and keep an open mind, like we talk about with, your Suolitis of the world on the rugby pitch, and it's, good things can happen.
Michael Hooper, thanks very much. I really appreciate this.
Thank you.